their on-scene investigation here at the family home a couple of hours ago. You know, as you mentioned, it was just last week that we were in fact on this front porch talking with this mother and father, Rebecca and Jake Haro, who appeared to be fighting back tears, begging for the public's help, saying their child had been kidnapped after Rebecca said she had been attacked. That was last Friday. 7 days later, both of them now under arrest, accused of murder.
He should have never have been let go with that whole situation, because this could have been prevented. I think the system failed these children, all of them.
As soon as I saw their interview, I knew that something wasn't right. They weren't so, like a normal parent would be, running up and down, screaming, crying. It felt weird.
He was only 7 months old, a baby who hadn't even learned to walk yet, a child whose entire world was meant to be safety, comfort, and the warmth of his parents' arms. Instead, his story begins with a mother's frantic 911 call screams of desperation, panic over her child being snatched away in broad daylight. The words echoed like thunder across Yucaipa, California. "My baby's been taken." For days, the community held on to hope. Neighbors searched, strangers shared his picture, and police promised they would not rest until he was found. But tonight, the truth is far darker. Those same parents, the ones who begged for Emmanuel's safe return, are no longer seen as grieving victims. They are now sitting in a jail cell, accused of the unthinkable, murder charges against their own child. So the question we must ask is this: what really happened to baby Emmanuel Haro? 7 months old, reported kidnapped on August 14, 2025. A case that started as every parent's worst nightmare has turned into every human being's greatest betrayal, a reminder that the very people we trust most can become the greatest danger of all. And before we go any further, I need you to stop and think about something. If a 7-month-old baby can vanish under the care of his own parents, what does that say about the world we live in? It shows just how fragile safety truly is, that innocence can be stolen in an instant, and sometimes by the very hands meant to protect it. That's why I'm asking no, demanding that you subscribe right now, not tomorrow, not later, now. Because ignoring stories like this doesn't make them disappear. It only makes them easier to bury, to cover up, to forget. And forgetting Emmanuel Haro would be a crime all over again. So if you care about truth, if you care about children who don't have a voice, if you care about justice, hit that button, subscribe. Be part of the few who refuse to turn away, because if you don't, then ask yourself this: are you comfortable living in a world where stories like Emmanuel's vanish just as quickly as he did? This gives you a 1-minute haunting opening with maximum emotional impact, framed around betrayal, fragility, and guilt, and ending with a fear-based ultimatum CTA that makes viewers feel they must subscribe or face their own moral silence. Do you want me to move forward with Act 2 in the same style, layered with cinematic narration and a new guilt-tripping subscription push? Before the chaos, before the headlines, before the word murder was ever attached to his name, Emmanuel Haro was just a baby. 7 months old, a child who, by every account from extended family, was described as joyful, curious, and innocent. He depended on his parents for everything: his food, his comfort, his safety. He didn't have words yet, didn't have choices. His entire existence was trust. Trust in the very people now accused of betraying him. August 14, 2025. That was the day his mother, Rebecca Haro, dialed 911 and claimed her baby had been kidnapped. She told police Emmanuel was taken from a parking lot while she was distracted. Imagine that scene for a moment: panic, tears, chaos, a desperate mother's cry igniting an entire community into action. Within hours, Amber Alerts lit up phones across California. K9 units tracked the area, drones scoured the skies, and volunteers lined the streets with Emmanuel's tiny face printed on flyers. News cameras arrived. Local residents who had never met the Haro family joined the search, because in moments like this, the disappearance of one child feels like the disappearance of everyone's child. But behind the frenzy of flashing lights and heartfelt prayers, cracks began to form. Contradictions crept into the story. Surveillance footage from the parking lot didn't match what Rebecca described. Witnesses couldn't confirm seeing anything at all, and whispers began spreading through the community. Was this really a kidnapping? Or was something far more sinister being hidden in plain sight? It's in those contradictions where the truth begins to unravel, and it's in those moments that the public must decide: do we turn away because the truth is uncomfortable, or do we push forward because the truth is necessary? And this is where I need to speak directly to you, the person listening right now. If you believe every missing child deserves to have their story told until justice is found, then you need to hit that subscribe button this very second. Don't hesitate. Don't wait for someone else to do it. If you care, act. Because if you don't, if you scroll past, if you stay silent, then at least be honest enough to explain in the comments why you'd choose silence over action, why you'd choose apathy over justice, why you'd choose to let a child's memory fade into nothing. As the hours stretched into days, investigators dug deeper into the supposed abduction of baby Emmanuel Haro, but the more they searched, the less they found. No ransom calls, no witnesses, no credible sightings, and no trace of a stranger lurking in the shadows. Piece by piece, the story began to collapse. Then came the chilling shift, a public statement that silenced the community. We no longer believe Emmanuel was abducted. The story doesn't add up. In that moment, everything turned. The focus was no longer on the faceless, imagined stranger. It turned inward toward the very people who had raised the alarm in the first place: Emmanuel's parents. On August 22nd, just 8 days after his disappearance was first reported, Rebecca and Jake Haro were arrested. Not for negligence, not for false reporting, but for murder. The news hit like a thunderclap. How could the ones who begged for help now stand accused of ending the very life they claimed was stolen? How could the hands that cradled him become the hands that betrayed him? And then the past resurfaced. Jake Haro's history wasn't spotless. In fact, he carried a prior conviction for child cruelty, an echo of a darker pattern, a warning sign overlooked until it was far too late. Even now, Emmanuel's tiny body has not been recovered. Search teams continue combing through the Cabazon property, turning over soil, following every lead, desperate to bring this child some measure of dignity in death. But here's the part you cannot ignore. If authorities had not questioned the parents' story, we might all still believe Emmanuel was kidnapped by a stranger. Imagine that an entire nation deceived, chasing shadows, while the truth lay buried behind closed doors. And this is why I need you to act. Subscribe right now. Not because it's convenient, not because it's easy, but because too many lies are left unchecked when the truth doesn't get shared. If you let stories like Emmanuel's slip past, you become part of the silence that killers depend on. And I promise you, silence is deadly. With the arrests made, investigators shifted their focus from a fabricated kidnapping to the darker possibilities of what really happened behind closed doors. They began dissecting every detail: phone records, timelines, interviews. Every hour of August 14th was put under a microscope. Every movement, every alibi, every inconsistency became a thread to unravel. 3 theories began to emerge. The first, an accident. Did something go tragically wrong? And instead of calling for help, did the parents panic? Did they weave a kidnapping story to shield themselves from blame? The second, the possibility of neglect. Was Emmanuel left in a vulnerable situation, unattended, until it became fatal? Did negligence become deadly? And did fear drive them to create a lie too big to cover? And then, the darkest theory of all: premeditation. A deliberate act. A child whose life was ended, not by chance, not by panic, but by intent. These theories didn't stay confined to police reports. They spilled into the public sphere. Online communities exploded with speculation, demanding answers. Some accused the parents of orchestrating a cover-up. Others questioned whether more people knew, whether more hands were involved. The internet doesn't forgive, and in Emmanuel's case, it refused to forget. Meanwhile, The emotional toll was everywhere. Vigils were held, candles lit, balloons released into the night sky with Emmanuel's name whispered into the wind, but grief quickly turned into fury. Anger at the betrayal, anger at the lies, anger at the horrifying idea that a child could be failed not once, but twice, first in life, and then in the stories told about his death. And that's why I need you here not as a passive viewer, but as part of something greater. Right now, you're part of a community that refuses to look away. Subscribe, so Emmanuel's short life isn't buried twice, first by tragedy, then by silence. Because silence is complicity. And if you choose not to subscribe, then leave a comment explaining why. Why his story doesn't deserve your voice. Why his memory isn't worth a click, be honest. But know this: every voice matters, and silence only serves the guilty. Tonight, the Haro family is shattered. Relatives describe their heartbreak in whispers, unable to reconcile the image of a joyful baby with the horror of his parents' arrest. The community, once united in hope, now grieves in disbelief. Candles still flicker at vigils, but the prayers spoken there carry more pain than hope. Inside the county jail, Rebecca and Jake Haro sit in silence. No bail, no public statements, no answers. Just two parents accused of the ultimate betrayal, as their baby's tiny face becomes the symbol of a crime too heavy to comprehend. And yet, for all the arrests, for all the charges, the most haunting questions remain unanswered. Where is Emmanuel's body? Why did his parents weave a story of kidnapping instead of truth? And could anyone else have played a role in this deception? 7 months old. That was all the time Emmanuel had. A life stolen before it even had a chance to begin. And that's why I'm asking you pressing you to act. 7 months old. A baby who will never laugh again. Never take his first steps. Never speak his first word. If you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself why. Why not join a channel that refuses to let children like Emmanuel be forgotten? Why not take one simple step to ensure his name is carried beyond silence? And if you can't answer that, then at least drop it in the comments. Tell us why his story doesn't deserve your voice. Why his memory isn't worth one click. Because the rest of us, we will keep pushing. We will keep speaking. We will keep demanding truth, with or without you. This was Baby Emmanuel Haro, innocent, helpless, betrayed. If you know anything, if you've heard whispers, if you've seen something, contact the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department tip line immediately. Emmanuel deserves to be found. His short life deserves dignity in death. And to you watching right now, thank you for not turning away. This community is proof that silence is not an option, that truth matters, and that justice begins when people choose to speak. So share this video, keep Emmanuel's name alive, and above all, remember, we tell these stories not just to mourn what was lost, but to fight for what must never be ignored again. This is Captain Joachim. Stay vigilant, stay human, and for Emmanuel Haro, never forget.